The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. You have faith in God, have faith also in me. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not, would I have told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back again and take you to myself, so that where I am, you also may be. Where I am going, you know the way." Thomas said to him, "Master, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way?" Jesus said to him, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
My name is Father Daniel Ciucci. I hail from the Archdiocese of Denver, and I am, to most of you, Aunt Mary Catherine's grandson. And along with the other grandchildren who are able to be here, and with those who are not, we thank you for your presence at this funeral mass. It's utterly evident in this world that imperfection abounds, that this world and even our lives can be fraught with pain and difficulty and longing, and to top it all off, it ends in death. And to those who do not have hope, this world is utterly difficult. But to those who have hope, this world is not only bearable, but it has moments of even poignant joy. This candle here in the middle is called the Paschal Candle, coming from Pascha or Easter. And the Church primarily uses it at 3 different points throughout the year. We light it at the Easter Vigil. Father blesses it, pierces it 5 times for the wounds of Jesus. And it is to serve as a light in the darkness, that when the darkness of death descends over an individual and over their family, there may yet be a light that shines. Because we are Christians, and Christians have hope that this world and all therein contained is not the end. It's not the everything. As with every candle, but particularly the Paschal Candle, we have a hope in not just a ruler and not just a judge, but in a Savior. And one who saved his life, saved our lives, poured his life out extravagantly, so that we would but say yes to him and be caught up in his divine love forever. We know from our human experience that this world is far from perfect, that even we become accustomed to the pain and discomfort of this world, becoming aware of its finitude, that all things here come to an end. And yet we believe heaven, the presence of God, unmediated, is a place of total perfection for a God who is all love. And so one of the reasons we Christians come together to offer a funeral mass on behalf of our beloved is in the sure and certain hope that God will do whatever he needs to do in the heart and soul of one who has known this world of finitude and make it capable of infinity and perfection. In this Mass, we offer prayers on behalf of our beloved so that the Lord would increase in her a capacity to receive infinity himself, God himself. I've known my grandmother throughout the years to sit in her front office area by the computer. Sometimes she would have a rosary or would pray along with EWTN. And I'm reminded that every Hail Mary that she offered was like putting $1 in a retirement account. For every time we pray the Hail Mary, we pray that the Lord would be close to us sinners now and at the hour of our death. And that my grandmother, Ciucci, Aunt Mary Catherine, had a grace of final perseverance in love and peace of Jesus. For this we are utterly grateful. From the first reading, the souls of the just are in the hands of God, and no torment shall touch them, for they are at peace. Peace is a funny biblical word. It has to do with completeness. In fact, if you go to Israel today, the way they ask, how are you? They say, Ma shlomcha, shalom. They literally say, how is your peace? That notion of peace has to do with completeness. So if you have a wall, like the walls that surround Jerusalem, and it is intact, it is secure, it can keep the city in peace from invaders, it is also known as a peaceful wall. This notion of peace is utterly beautiful for the Christian. We construct our lives like an edifice, brick by brick, stone by stone, beam by beam, so that we too may over time invite Christ more deeply into our lives, so that we may be an edifice unto his glory, so that we practice him dwelling in us in this life, so that we may be brought to dwell in his life for all eternity. Now, your edifice and my edifice has plenty of holes. Our walls are not perfectly peaceful. One of the things I loved about my grandmother is she was always on the prowl for kind of the next gadget. When the internet came, she took to that. And then she would find these very tinkering-like flashlights, or a certain kind of alarm that kept rats away, or a certain kind of thing to stamp out your bills so that no one could read them afterwards. And each of these things about my grandmother were her recognizing that in this world, we're not totally going to have everything together. Our peace will not be secured and complete in this world. But she was fascinated with life and loved her family dearly. She was, as many of you have characterized, a woman of peace. Incomplete, yes, but seeking completion in the Lord. As her physical weakness crept in, especially towards the end of her life, and she was not able to attend Mass for a number of years, she still would sit in that front office chair praying, seeking the peace of Christ. See, some of us in this world pretend who have holes in our walls. Sometimes we'll tape up plastic vinyl and just pretend nothing is there. But it's the courage of the Christian to say, Lord, I am incomplete. Let me find my completeness in you. And so instead of shoving styrofoam or pillows and blankets or whatever to pretend that our walls, that our edifices, that the buildings of our hearts are complete, we have to wait. This is the hope of Christianity from our second reading. I am convinced that neither death, nor life, nor principalities, nor powers, nothing can separate us from the love of God. Of a God whose voracious hunger for our hearts has led him to do acts of extravagant love on the cross, to grab our attention, to be drawn to him who is love and whose love alone satisfies for all of eternity. And so you have Jesus in the gospel now. This is John chapter 14. The crucifixion is only a few chapters away. He is preparing his disciples for what is to come. The tragedy, the horror, and the torture of Good Friday. How does he do that? By signaling the resurrection, by signaling that Christians have hope, by signaling that a God who dies will not be a God of the dead. For the Lord has prepared a place for each of us. And Jesus Christ is the way. Peace in anything outside of Jesus only amounts to pleasant distraction. And so we Christians who believe in a God of mercy and a God of love and a God for whom nothing can get in his way to us, so that he waits for our yes, that we may accept him, he is going to prepare a place for us. A place far better than any Marriott, a place far better than any beach resort, a place where we may dwell together in safety, in security, in love, and in peace. It is this peace for which we all long, that our hearts may be drawn more and more and more towards the saving work of Jesus Christ. To him be all the glory, now and forever. Amen. I mentioned Mary Ciucci both in the capacity of grandmother and of aunt, but she is also certainly spouse, bride, and mother. And among the most sacred of offices, of duties on this world, is that of a mother. Because the mother, and in her womb, provides the first wall of security, the first place of protection, the first dwelling of peace within the sacredness of her own body. To lose a mother is something utterly painful. The two sons, my father, John, and my uncle, Steve, wish to pay tribute at this time to their mother.
Thank you, Daniel. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming to celebrate my mother's life. Each of you were very important to my mom. You're very important to me, my dad, my brother and sister. Heard a lot last night, testimonials to my mom. She was a strong, a smart, and a happy mother. You could tell my mom was happy because she would sing. She'd sing throughout the house when she was cooking dinner. When she was cleaning up, serving the family, she would sing. It was so pleasant to come home and hear Mom sing because you knew you were being raised in a happy home. My mom was also strong and tough. You had to be tough to teach school in Baltimore. You had to be tough to teach school in the Air Force Base over in Japan. And I'm not sure about how tough you have to be, but Tussie, but she's taught at Tussie as well. I used to play baseball. One little league game in Japan. My coach, who liked to drink, decided he was going to drink before the start of that game. And somehow he decided he was going to continue to drink during that game. And as he continued to get a little more under the influence, he started getting louder, started giving the umps a hard time. And when he started to give us a hard time, I saw my mom get up out of the bleacher, walk down to the dugout. And I said, this is not going to work out well for somebody. I grabbed a bat, and I stood about a swing's length away from my coach. My mom came in there, grabbed him by the ear, marched him out, sat him on the bleachers. He never moved, never said another word for the rest of that game. I was so proud of Mom. Mom's also, she was a holy mother. You heard Daniel talk about where she liked to sit, how she liked to pray. We never missed Mass with Mom. She taught religious education. She never cussed, never once heard her cuss. She seldom drank, would have a thimbleful of wine with my dad and myself at some of the dinners. But it's interesting, I saw my first R-rated movie with my mom. I was 9 years old. We were in Japan. Dad was away on work, and The Graduate came out. So Mom took my sister, my brother, and myself to a movie. I should say I saw part of an R-rated movie with my mom, because as soon as it started good and Mrs. Robinson started to have her way with Dustin Hoffman, my mom would have nothing of it, got us up out of the movie theater and marched us the heck out of there. As I said, you all mean a lot to Mom. We used to travel the world, but we always came home for our holidays, for our vacations, and we considered this home. As we're driving up, Mom would give us the rules of engagement at Grandma's house. You can't drink the water. John, you can't play with the matches. You're not allowed to slide down the banister. Never knew why we couldn't slide down the banister, but you're not allowed to slide down the biggest banister. Well, the one time we were coming back from Guam, I was just finished first grade, and Mom was showing us pictures of all of our aunts and uncles. You all were throwing a welcome home party. She wanted us to remember each one of you. I was very proud of myself that I got every aunt and uncle, but I didn't know who that pretty older lady was sitting in the corner of the living room. So finally at the end, I walked up and I said, "Are you my grandmother?" And she said, "Yes, I am." And I gave her the biggest hug. And it was that trip to grandmother's that I learned God places angels on this earth. And Grandma Reed was an angel. And once I realized that, I quickly learned my mother was an angel as well. She touched our lives and made our lives so much better. Everybody that had the privilege of meeting my mom or being touched by Mom was better off for it. We heard Cousin Barb give a little testimony last night about my mom being an angel. So Mom, I know you're in heaven. I love you. I miss you already. And I hope I'm blessed to be able to join you at your side in heaven at some time in the future. Cousin Tony, thank you for playing. Once again, thank all of you for celebrating my mom's life. And young man, thank you.
Wow, that's tough to follow. First of all, who knew that you could find the world's largest indoor wreath right here in Dudley? It's amazing. We don't share the same speechwriter, so there's a little bit of overlap here, but we do share the same parole officers. Just a little bit of humor. So good afternoon, I'm Steve Ciucci. I'm the youngest of Mary and John's children. And like John did, I'd like to thank all of you for being here to celebrate Mom's life, a life well lived. I'd also like to thank our sister Marie and her husband Billy, who spent the better part of 4 months in D.C. helping Dad take care of Mom. It was huge for Dad and for Mom, very comforting for Mom, Marie. So thank you so much for that personal sacrifice. We cannot express our gratitude enough. My relationship with my mother was just that. It was mother and son, as Daniel described. Since graduating college, I lived 400 to 500 miles away from my parents for the last 35 years. So we only saw one another on special occasions. But we did talk on the phone. And then, as Daniel mentioned, Mom was computer literate, and she liked to surf the web and send emails. So we communicated a fair amount via email. She was smart and accomplished and a world traveler, but her passion was taking care of the family, and that's what she did best. She was a great mother. She was the best mother. She, along with Dad, gave us a great foundation: good values, manners, respect for others, independence, a good work ethic, lots of church, too much catechism, way more than any of us wanted. Sorry, fathers. Mom was also a great cook, and although I was not a fan of salmon cakes that she prepared often during Lent on Friday, she did have some great recipes. I took those recipes to college with me, and I don't do a lot of the cooking anymore. Beth does, and she will cook a number of Mom's recipes, so we all continue to enjoy them. We didn't eat out a lot growing up. I think I calculated Mom probably cooked over 40,000 meals in her lifetime for the family, and many for Dad here. We had a great childhood. It was a very interesting childhood. As the youngest of three, once my siblings were in school, I went everywhere with my mother. I remember a story, as John shared, when I was quite young, I had saved up $5, and it was in the form of a $5 bill. And I wanted to use that $5 to buy a Mickey Mouse watch at some department store. I can't even quite remember exactly where it was. And while at that store, I somehow managed to lose that $5 bill. John wasn't with us, because if he was, I knew he would have stolen that $5 bill. But I lost that $5 bill. And Mom, she went to the department store manager, and he announced over the PA that a child had lost a $5 bill. And not long after that, that $5 bill showed up. And not long after that, I got my Mickey Mouse watch. So Mom was a problem solver. As a military family, we moved a lot. By the time each of us graduated high school, John and I think we lived in 8 different places. And Marie, for you, I think it was 9 different places or more by the time we got out of high school. And this includes 2 years in the South Pacific on the island of Guam, complete with exotic beaches and monsoons and typhoons. In the early 70s, we also lived in Tokyo, Japan for 4 years, as many of you know. And I don't think we came back to the States during that 4-year period. Certainly for Mom and Dad, it was no small feat picking up their entire family, moving them around the world every 2 to 3 years for 20 years straight. For us kids, we were kind of like luggage. As I recall, I think our parents chose Japan over Central America. I think it was Panama was the option for that tour of duty. Japan was a very interesting tour of duty for us and very formative. Marie was in high school. Unfortunately for her, she had to split high school between Japan and Ohio. John had to split. I was fortunate enough I was able to do all 4 years of high school in Dayton and didn't have that added complexity in life. And while in Japan, it was very traumatic for me. I had my mother as my 4th grade typing teacher. And I think there's some folks in here that maybe had typing with Mary Catherine. So I think she could type 90 words a minute without making a mistake. And she could crack the whip whenever she had to. It wasn't very often, but when she had to, she could. We lived on the Air Force Base and had American comforts on that base, including a movie theater. And I was going to also tell the graduate story. I feel like I got cheated, not because of what was going on between Dustin and Mrs. Robinson, but because I didn't get that stock tip about buying plastics way back in the 60s. If you remember that one word, plastics, if you recall the movie The Graduate. Moving all the time was exciting for us kids, and we stuck together, and we were always the new kids on the block. Fortunately for me, I had an older brother and an older sister. looking out for me. While I got protection, I was always low man on the totem pole, which meant that I sat in the middle of the back seat of the Rambler station wagon with no seat belts, no air conditioning, and just an AM radio, while John and Mary drove us all over the country and even all over Japan. Amazingly, that Rambler got shipped to Japan, and we drove all over Japan in that thing. We were quite an oddity. My mom with blonde hair, Marie and I with red hair, a bunch of pale-faced Americans going to places where folks, frankly, had never seen Americans. So my dad was quite adventurous, driving that big vehicle around those little streets all through various towns in Japan. In 1974, we moved from Japan to Dayton, Ohio, which was close enough to make the regular trips back up here to the mountain for family reunions and various holidays. And I would say the reunions were absolutely a blast. All the parents were enjoying one another's company and some adult beverages, of course, so they weren't paying a whole lot of attention to us punks, so we could kind of do what we wanted to do. So we were playing poker, occasionally stealing some beer, football games in the lower yard, shooting BB guns, a little bit of everything. It was just a great deal of fun. And also, while we were up here, we enjoyed spotlighting for deer with Uncle Danny, mail runs with Uncle Danny, went on lots of mail runs with Uncle Danny. Swimming in the pool in the Johnson's backyard, fetching drinking water from the spring. Actually, I think that was just hard labor. And then fur trapping with Bradley Boffman. And of course, my favorite was finding spare change in Grandma's house. She said, any change you can find in the house, you can have. And, you know, I didn't understand why there was so much change laying around somebody's house. As a kid, that seemed crazy to me, but we have change all over our house as well. Those were simpler times. While we were in high school, Mary was a little bored, so she decided to get her MBA from Wright State University. Every time she asked me if I had my homework done, I said, well, do you have your homework done? So we always got a chuckle about that. Mom and I endured the blizzard of 78. I think Dad was away on business. John was in college. Marie was out of the house. So I think that was the lowest barometric pressure in the history of Ohio, all of Ohio. It still is a record. So I got 5 days of school off, and I looked forward to more blizzards. Each year in high school, it was customary for seniors to prank the school in some way. And actually, Daniel, we were talking about this a little bit on the ride home last night. And I think John and his posse, I can't remember, I think maybe they brought in a bunch of livestock into the commons. But so I was somehow part of the crew working on the prank for the class of 79 in Fairborn Park Hills High School. And while we were at the school, I don't know, 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning or something like that, the police arrived and we all scattered, of course. I managed to work my way back home on foot. And not long after, the police called the house. So apparently one of my cohorts must have got waterboarded and gave up all of our names, right? So I can tell you, Mary read that cop the riot act on the phone and said that I was home and I'd been home all night. That may have been the only little white lie she had told in her entire life. So Mom became a whole lot cooler to me that night. Later that year, I was off to college, and again, fortunately for me, my brother John was already at Penn State, so my freshman year transition was a lot easier than it otherwise would have been. And my mom gave me the advice. She said, Steve, you've been a very good student in high school. I know you will be in college, but don't worry about straight A's. Have some fun. And that really took the pressure off, and I had a lot of fun, and we had a lot of fun up there in Happy Valley. Another story from the days at Penn State, it was Christmas break, and Mom and Dad lived in San Antonio, Texas, and we were not able to get a plane ticket to fly down to Texas for Christmas, so we decided to take a Greyhound bus from State College to San Antonio, Texas. It was a 48-hour bus ride each way with some very interesting people. If you've ever taken a Greyhound trip across the country, I'm still scarred from that trip. Anyway, John and I were celebrating pretty hard after finals, right on up to getting on that bus. Me, personally, I was hungover by the time we got to Pittsburgh, and we had 45 hours left to go. So long trip. And our parents felt so sorry for us that Mom and Dad purchased 6 cases of Coors beer for us. And I can't remember if we had it on the bus or it got shipped back. But in those days, you couldn't get Coors east of the Mississippi. So all of a sudden, we get back to school, John and I, with a bunch of Coors beer, and we became rather popular, but it didn't last very long. So as I said, Mom was pretty cool. As a family, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, and we didn't take fancy vacations, but we always had what we needed. Lots of love from Mom. She was the best mom ever. Thanks for taking such great care of us. We love you, Mom. Until we meet again.